Hey man, sometimes the woman was never emotionally pursuing connection the way you were, so she was pursuing validation, and those are two completely different psychological experiences. A man enters the interaction hoping to build emotional intimacy, consistency, and momentum. Meanwhile, the woman may simply be chasing emotional reassurance, attention, compliments, emotional excitement, proof that she is still desirable. And once she receives enough of that emotional validation, her interest suddenly disappears. That's when ghosting usually happens. A lot of men misunderstand ghosting because they think if she talked to me every day, flirted heavily, opened up emotionally, and acted interested, then surely her feelings were real. But emotional engagement does not always equal emotional investment. That's the painful part. Some people enjoy emotional stimulation without wanting emotional responsibility afterward. They enjoy being desired, enjoy attention, enjoy feeling emotionally important in someone's mind. But the moment the interaction starts becoming real, deeper, or emotionally serious, they pull away. Modern dating especially encourages validation addiction, social media, dating apps, constant attention loops. A woman can feel lonely, insecure, emotionally bored, or emotionally disconnected one night and instantly receive emotional energy from dozens of men online within minutes. Compliments, flirting, attention, pursuit. And over time, some women unconsciously begin using male attention as emotional regulation instead of genuine connection. That's where ghosting becomes common, because once the emotional craving gets satisfied temporarily, the urgency disappears. Think about it honestly. Many women do not ghost at the beginning when they feel emotionally empty. They ghost after receiving reassurance, after enough attention, enough compliments, enough emotional focus from you, because the interaction was psychologically feeding insecurity more than building genuine attachment. And once the insecurity calms down temporarily, they emotionally disappear again. This is also why some women suddenly reappear later out of nowhere, not always because they deeply miss you, sometimes because they miss the emotional validation you provided. There's a difference. Missing your attention and missing you are not automatically the same thing, psychologically. A lot of men confuse the two because the behavior can look identical on the surface, but internally, the motivation behind it may be completely different. A lot of women are also emotionally addicted to the early stages of attraction, the excitement, the attention, the emotional tension, the feeling of being desired. But once consistency, emotional accountability, or real relationship energy starts entering the picture, their interest drops. Because emotional fantasy is exciting, emotional responsibility feels heavier, and many people today are emotionally unprepared for depth, even while craving attention constantly. This is why some women can text constantly for days, flirt intensely, emotionally future project, and then disappear almost overnight. To men, it feels shocking, but to emotionally validation-driven people, the interaction was never fully grounded in long-term emotional intention to begin with. It was emotional stimulation in the moment, and once the emotional high faded, so did the effort. The painful thing for men is that ghosting often creates self-doubt. What did I do wrong? Why did she suddenly change? Was another guy better? And yes, sometimes another option exists, but honestly, many ghosting situations are less about your value and more about her emotional inconsistency internally. A person using attention for self-worth often loses interest once emotional reality starts replacing emotional fantasy. This is also why emotionally grounded men rarely get destroyed by ghosting long-term, because they understand an important truth. Someone disappearing after receiving attention often says more about their emotional habits than your worth as a man. Emotionally mature people communicate and don't repeatedly use human beings as temporary emotional batteries. And once a man fully understands that, he stops internalizing every disappearance as personal failure. That's the brutal truth. Modern dating hides from men. Some women are not looking for connection when they meet you. They are looking for emotional reassurance, stimulation, distraction, or validation. And once they receive enough of it, they vanish, not because you lacked value, but because the emotional purpose you served in their mind was temporary from the beginning. One of the biggest reasons this behavior confuses men so deeply is because the emotional energy felt real while it was happening. The late night conversations felt real, the flirting felt real, the attention felt real, and in many cases, the emotions were real in the moment. That's what makes modern dating psychologically messy. A person can genuinely enjoy your attention, genuinely feel emotionally excited by you, genuinely crave your energy temporarily, and still have absolutely no emotional consistency afterward. Temporary emotion and long-term intention are not the same thing. A lot of women today are emotionally lonely, but not emotionally available. That distinction matters deeply. They crave connection during empty moments, crave emotional stimulation during boredom, crave reassurance during insecurity, but once emotional closeness actually starts becoming consistent, serious, or emotionally vulnerable, they disappear. Because attention is easy to consume, real connection requires emotional accountability, and many people today are addicted to the first while being emotionally unprepared for the second. This is also why some women seem intensely interested one week and emotionally cold the next. Men think, how does someone switch up that fast? But emotionally validation-driven people are often reacting to feelings in the moment instead of building stable emotional investment over time. So when they feel emotionally low, they seek attention aggressively. When they feel emotionally full again, the effort fades. Not because you suddenly became worthless overnight, because the interaction was emotionally serving a temporary internal need inside her. And honestly, social media has amplified this behavior massively. Women today receive emotional reinforcement constantly. A single picture can bring hundreds of compliments. A sad post can bring emotional attention instantly. A little flirtation can create endless validation loops from multiple men simultaneously. So some women unconsciously stop viewing male attention as emotionally meaningful. It becomes emotional consumption, something to temporarily feel better. And once attention becomes consumption instead of connection, ghosting becomes psychologically easy. This is why emotionally grounded men pay more attention to consistency than intensity. Intensity means very little without consistency. A woman texting you all day for 3 days means nothing if she disappears emotionally the moment her mood changes. Real emotional investment reveals itself through steadiness, communication, effort, clarity, emotional reliability, not temporary emotional excitement. And once men truly understand this, they stop getting hypnotized by fast emotional highs. A lot of women also ghost because fantasy feels safer than reality. While the interaction stays flirtatious, emotionally exciting, and undefined, she can enjoy the emotional dopamine without responsibility. But once things start becoming emotionally real, plans, commitment, emotional depth, accountability, fear enters the picture. Now she risks disappointment, vulnerability, emotional responsibility, and many people who crave validation are secretly terrified of real emotional exposure, so they disappear instead. This is why some women return repeatedly after ghosting too. Not always because they deeply changed, sometimes because their emotional emptiness returned. They missed the attention, missed the reassurance, missed feeling desired again. And the moment loneliness, insecurity, boredom, or emotional confusion reappears, they revisit old emotional supply sources. That's why so many men get trapped in endless, almost relationships today. The dangerous thing is that emotionally validation-driven people often say things that sound deeply genuine: future plans, emotional compliments, strong attraction, and in the moment they may even believe their own emotions. But emotionally mature people understand something important. Words spoken during emotional highs mean very little without consistent action afterward. Consistency is the real language of emotional intention, not temporary intensity. This is also why ghosting hurts men's self-worth so deeply sometimes, because men usually attach meaning to effort. If she gave me this much attention, surely I mattered deeply. But attention alone is not proof of emotional depth anymore in modern dating. For some people, attention is entertainment, emotional stimulation, temporary escape from loneliness or insecurity. And once men fully understand that, they stop blaming themselves every time someone emotionally inconsistent disappears. That's the brutal truth behind a lot of modern ghosting. Some women are not emotionally building toward love when they meet men. They are emotionally feeding temporary insecurity, boredom, loneliness, or validation hunger. And once the emotional craving gets temporarily satisfied, they vanish without explanation. Not because the man lacked value, but because the connection was never emotionally rooted in genuine long-term intention from the start. One of the most confusing things for men is how emotionally convincing some women can sound right before disappearing. She talks about future plans, acts emotionally attached, shares personal stories, makes the connection feel emotionally special, and then suddenly, nothing. Cold replies, distance, disappearance. and the man sits there trying to understand how someone can emotionally switch that fast. But the reality is, many people today confuse emotional intensity with emotional depth. They are not the same thing. A woman seeking validation often behaves most intensely when she feels emotionally empty internally. That's important to understand. During insecurity, loneliness, boredom, heartbreak, or emotional confusion, male attention becomes emotionally soothing. It temporarily restores confidence, temporarily restores desirability, temporarily restores emotional excitement. So during those moments, her energy toward you may feel incredibly strong because the emotional need inside her is strong. But once the internal emptiness calms down temporarily, the emotional urgency around you fades too. This is why some women ghost. Right after receiving genuine emotional interest from a man, the validation goal got completed. Now the fantasy becomes reality, and reality requires consistency, effort, accountability, emotional maturity. That's where many validation-driven people disappear because they were emotionally consuming attention, not preparing for deeper connection. The interaction felt exciting while it remained emotionally stimulating, but emotional stimulation and emotional readiness are completely different things. A lot of women also enjoy the emotional power of being desired more than the responsibility of emotionally maintaining a relationship. Again, not all women, but many modern dating dynamics reward attention collection instead of emotional consistency. The woman feels attractive when men chase, feels emotionally important when men invest attention, feels reassured when men emotionally prioritize her. But once she fully secures that emotional reassurance, interest drops because the psychological craving underneath was validation, not commitment. And honestly, many men accidentally feed this cycle by over-investing emotionally too quickly. Instant emotional availability, constant compliments, constant attention, constant reassurance, and because the woman did not emotionally earn that level of investment gradually, the attention loses emotional weight fast. That's why emotionally grounded men observe consistency first, instead of immediately drowning women in emotional energy. This is also why ghosting often says more about emotional immaturity than cruelty. Emotionally mature people communicate honestly, even uncomfortable truths, but emotionally validation-driven people usually avoid uncomfortable emotional accountability altogether because they fear conflict, guilt, awkwardness, or emotional responsibility. So instead of clearly ending the interaction, they disappear silently, and silence becomes easier once the emotional need they were feeding already got satisfied. A lot of women who ghost are also addicted to novelty emotionally. New conversations, new attraction, new excitement, new emotional stimulation. The early stage gives dopamine, curiosity, fantasy, but long-term emotional consistency feels slower, calmer, and less stimulating initially. And people addicted to emotional highs often lose interest once relationships start requiring grounded emotional presence instead of constant excitement. This is why emotionally self-sufficient men recover from ghosting much faster psychologically, because they don't build their entire self-worth around one woman's temporary attention. They understand modern dating clearly. They know some people flirt for entertainment, some people seek emotional escape, some people use attention to soothe insecurity. And once a man stops romanticizing every emotional interaction immediately, he stops getting emotionally destroyed every time someone disappears inconsistently. The dangerous part for men is that ghosting creates obsession through confusion, no closure, no explanation, no emotional clarity, and the brain hates unfinished emotional loops, so men start over analyzing everything. What changed? What mistake did I make? Was it another guy? Meanwhile, sometimes the truth is much simpler and much more disappointing. The woman was emotionally using the interaction to feel better about herself temporarily. That's the brutal truth behind a huge amount of modern ghosting behavior. Some women are not emotionally building toward love when they interact with men. They are temporarily feeding and loneliness, insecurity, boredom, ego, or emotional emptiness through male attention. And once the emotional craving gets fulfilled enough, they disappear without guilt, because the interaction was never emotionally rooted deeply enough inside them to begin with. One of the darkest parts of validation-based dating is that some women genuinely enjoy feeling emotionally desired more than they enjoy genuinely knowing the man himself. That's why the beginning feels so intense sometimes. She asks questions, wants attention constantly, seems emotionally fascinated by you. But if you look closely, The emotional energy often revolves around how you make her feel about herself, not around truly building something grounded with you long term. And once that emotional mirror stops feeling exciting, she disappears. A lot of men mistake emotional availability for emotional sincerity. That's a dangerous mistake in modern dating. Someone can talk to you every day and still not be emotionally serious about you. Someone can flirt heavily and still not genuinely intend to stay. Someone can emotionally lean on you during lonely nights and still vanish once they feel emotionally okay again. Because attention is easy to consume when there's no emotional accountability attached to it. And modern dating has normalized emotional consumption completely. This is also why ghosting often happens, right after the man starts becoming emotionally invested for real. Notice the pattern. At first, she enjoys the attention because it boosts self-worth, but once she feels the man becoming emotionally attached, emotionally serious, emotionally consistent, panic or disinterest suddenly appears. Why? Because now the interaction stopped being lightweight validation. Now it carries emotional responsibility, and emotionally immature people often run the moment connection starts requiring responsibility instead of excitement alone. A lot of women today unconsciously use male attention like emotional medication. Feeling insecure? Post something attractive? Feeling lonely? Start conversations. Feeling emotionally empty? Reconnect with old male attention sources. And because social media gives instant emotional reinforcement constantly, many people never develop emotional discipline around validation. They become addicted to being desired, not necessarily to genuinely loving. That difference destroys many men emotionally because they assume intensity automatically means depth. The hardest thing for men to accept is that sometimes the connection was real emotionally, but only temporarily. That's why ghosting feels so confusing. You're trying to understand how someone who sounded emotionally sincere could suddenly disappear without explanation. But emotionally validation-driven people often live heavily through temporary feelings. In the moment, the attention felt good, the connection felt exciting, the emotional stimulation felt meaningful, but they were never emotionally building stable attachment underneath it. That's why consistency disappears once emotions shift. This is also why emotionally grounded men rarely get trapped in endless validation loops with women, because they pay attention to behavior patterns instead of emotional highs. Does she communicate consistently? Does she invest effort consistently? Does she remain emotionally present when excitement settles down? Those things matter far more than temporary intensity, because real emotional interest survives ordinary moments too, not just emotionally stimulating ones. And honestly, some women ghost because they enjoy the chase emotionally more than the relationship itself. The early stage gives dopamine, attention, curiosity, pursuit, validation, but long-term connection requires emotional stability, patience, communication, and accountability. And people addicted to emotional highs often become restless once the interaction starts becoming emotionally calm and real instead of exciting and fantasy-driven. So they leave searching for the next emotional spike. This is why many men feel emotionally drained after repeated ghosting experiences, not because they are weak, because inconsistent emotional reinforcement psychologically affects human beings deeply. One day she's emotionally intense, next day she disappears completely. That unpredictability creates obsession, confusion, and emotional overthinking because the brain keeps trying to solve what changed. Meanwhile, the real answer is often simpler. The woman was emotionally feeding herself through attention, not building something stable. A lot of women who ghost also return later pretending nothing happened. That confuses men even more, but usually the emotional pattern repeats. She disappears once emotionally satisfied, then reappears once emotional emptiness returns. And men who don't understand validation psychology mistake this reappearance for deep emotional attachment. Meanwhile, sometimes she simply misses feeling desired again. That's why emotionally mature men watch consistency over long periods instead of reacting emotionally to temporary returns. That's the brutal reality behind much of modern ghosting culture. Some women are not emotionally dating men. They are emotionally using men to regulate insecurity, loneliness, boredom, ego, or self-worth temporarily. And once the emotional craving gets fulfilled enough, they disappear without warning because the connection was built on emotional consumption instead of genuine emotional intention from the very beginning. Dog Gray. One of the biggest mistakes men make after being ghosted is assuming the woman must have discovered they weren't enough, so they start obsessively improving random things, looks, texting style, money, status, and self-improvement as good, but many ghosting situations are not even about male inadequacy in the first place. Sometimes the woman simply lacked emotional depth, emotional readiness, or emotional consistency from the beginning. The interaction served a temporary emotional purpose for her internally. Once that purpose got fulfilled, she emotionally disconnected. A lot of validation-driven women are not consciously evil either. That's important. Many of them don't even fully understand their own behavior. They genuinely feel lonely in the moment, genuinely crave connection in the moment, genuinely enjoy talking to you. But because they emotionally live through temporary feelings instead of grounded intention, their effort disappears once the emotional state changes. That's why their behavior feels so inconsistent. The emotional intensity was real, temporarily. The long-term intention was never stable underneath it. This is also why some women seem deeply affectionate through text, but emotionally unavailable in real life. Texting gives emotional stimulation without full emotional responsibility. It provides attention, fantasy, dopamine, reassurance. But real-life emotional consistency requires effort, vulnerability, patience, and accountability. And many people who are addicted to validation unconsciously avoid environments where emotional accountability becomes unavoidable. That's why they thrive in emotionally exciting, almost connections, but disappear once things become real. The painful truth is that modern dating has made many people emotionally transactional without even realizing it. Attention becomes currency. People collect admiration, compliments, emotional pursuit, and desire because it temporarily boosts self-worth internally. And once someone becomes emotionally dependent on validation for confidence, human beings slowly stop feeling like people. They start feeling like emotional resources. That's why ghosting has become so emotionally normalized today. A lot of men also unknowingly reward ghosting behavior by emotionally accepting women back too easily. Every time they return, she disappears for weeks, returns casually, gets emotional access again immediately, and because there are no emotional consequences, the pattern repeats endlessly. This is why emotionally grounded men pay attention to reliability instead of getting hypnotized by temporary chemistry every time the woman reappears emotionally. Because chemistry without consistency eventually becomes emotional chaos. This is also why emotionally mature women feel different immediately. They communicate clearly, stay emotionally consistent, handle uncomfortable conversations directly instead of vanishing. Even when attraction fades, they respect your humanity enough to create emotional clarity instead of confusion. And honestly, once a man experiences emotionally mature feminine energy, validation-driven behavior becomes much easier to recognize early. One of the darkest parts of validation culture is that some women become addicted to feeling pursued more than they enjoy actually building intimacy. The chase becomes the emotional drug. Knowing a man is thinking about her, wanting her, craving her attention, that emotional power boosts self-worth temporarily. But once the man becomes emotionally secured, emotionally available, emotionally invested, the excitement weakens because the validation challenge disappeared, and now she unconsciously seeks new emotional stimulation elsewhere. This is why emotionally self-sufficient men are much harder to manipulate through validation dynamics, because they don't emotionally overvalue temporary attention anymore. They understand that attraction without consistency means very little. Anyone can create emotional intensity briefly. Real emotional character reveals itself through steadiness over time, and once a man fully understands that distinction, ghosting stops damaging his self-worth the same way. The dangerous thing about ghosting is that it creates emotional addiction loops in men. The unpredictability keeps the brain attached. One day affection, one day silence, one day distance, then sudden reappearance. That inconsistency creates obsessive thinking because the nervous system keeps chasing emotional resolution. Meanwhile, the woman may simply be emotionally using the interaction whenever her internal emptiness spikes again. That's why emotionally disciplined men remove themselves from inconsistent people quickly. That's the brutal reality behind why some women use men for validation and then disappear. The connection was never emotionally rooted deeply enough to survive. Once the temporary emotional need got satisfied, she didn't necessarily want love. She wanted reassurance, attention, emotional stimulation, proof of desirability. And once those emotional cravings were temporarily fulfilled, the effort disappeared too, because the interaction was built around emotional consumption, not genuine emotional commitment. One of the saddest parts of modern dating is that many men are genuinely looking for emotional connection, while many women are simply looking for emotional relief. And those two intentions create completely different behaviors over time. A man becomes more emotionally invested as consistency grows, but a validation-driven woman often becomes less invested once her emotional emptiness temporarily fades. That's why the beginning can feel so intense and the ending can feel so cold. The emotional goals underneath the interaction were never the same. A lot of women who ghost are actually deeply insecure internally. That's why they crave attention so intensely in the first place. Validation temporarily silences insecurity. Being desired temporarily makes them feel valuable, attractive, wanted, important, but because the confidence comes externally instead of internally, the emotional hunger keeps returning again and again. And eventually, men stop feeling like people to emotionally validation-addicted women. They start feeling like emotional mirrors. This is why some women constantly restart the same emotional cycles with different men. Heavy attention, strong flirting, emotional excitement, then disappearance, over and over. Because the real addiction isn't connection, it's the emotional high of being desired. And once the novelty fades or emotional responsibility appears, they emotionally detach and search for fresh validation somewhere else. That cycle destroys many men emotionally because they mistake temporary emotional intensity for genuine emotional depth. The hardest thing for emotionally sincere men is realizing that effort alone does not create attachment anymore. You can be respectful, emotionally available, consistent, supportive, and still get ghosted. Why? Because ghosting often has less to do with your treatment of her and more to do with her inability to sustain emotionally mature connection consistently. That realization hurts because men naturally want clear cause and effect explanations for emotional pain, but modern dating often lacks emotional logic completely. This is also why emotionally grounded men move more carefully now. Not because they became cold, because they learned that attention means nothing without consistency over time. Anybody can create emotional sparks temporarily. Anybody can flirt intensely during lonely nights. Anybody can sound emotionally attached during emotional highs. But emotional character reveals itself through reliability when excitement settles down. That's the real test. A lot of women who ghost also struggle deeply with emotional accountability. Having an honest conversation feels uncomfortable. Telling someone, "I'm not emotionally serious," or "I lost interest," or "I only liked the attention," requires emotional maturity. So instead, they disappear silently because avoidance feels easier than uncomfortable honesty. And unfortunately, modern dating has normalized avoidance so much that many people no longer even feel guilty about it. One of the darkest things about validation culture is how easily people become emotionally disposable. A woman gets bored emotionally, new attention exists instantly, feels insecure emotionally, hundreds of men available online. That endless availability destroys emotional discipline because people stop sitting with loneliness long enough to develop emotional depth properly. Instead, they constantly self-medicate through attention, and ghosting becomes inevitable in environments built around endless emotional stimulation. This is why emotionally self-sufficient men protect their attention carefully, because they understand attention is emotional energy. Giving unlimited emotional access too quickly to inconsistent people eventually drains peace, confidence, and emotional stability. So grounded men stop romanticizing chemistry alone. They start valuing emotional reliability, maturity, and consistency far more than temporary attraction spikes. And honestly, that mindset saves men from enormous emotional damage long term. The irony is that many women who use men for validation eventually feel emotionally empty despite receiving endless attention. Because validation cannot permanently heal insecurity. No amount of compliments permanently fixes internal emptiness. If self-worth still depends on outside attention constantly, so the cycle repeats endlessly. New men, new attention, temporary emotional highs, then emotional emptiness returning again afterward. That's why many validation-driven people seem emotionally restless no matter how much attention they receive. That's the brutal reality behind why some women use men for validation and then ghost. The interaction was never deeply rooted in emotional stability, emotional readiness, or genuine long-term intention. It was temporary emotional feeding, a way to soothe insecurity, loneliness, boredom, ego, or emotional emptiness for a little while. And once the emotional hunger calmed down temporarily, the connection disappeared too, because the attention mattered more to her than the actual human being giving it.